Imagine moving to a quiet, scenic mountain town only to find it on edge, with its people fleeing and strange warnings being whispered. This is the story of the Simon family, whose new start quickly turns into a nightmarish ordeal. Welcome to today's spine-chilling tale. Don't Open the Door, Part 1. Stay tuned, because this story will make you think twice about answering a knock after dark. If you enjoy gripping stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next thrilling installment. Your support helps us bring more hair-raising tales to life. And trust me, Part 2 of this story is going to be even more terrifying. This story is divided into parts to explain the scenes better. Don't Open the Door Part 1. Friday. How long are you two going to be like this? Daniel asked, looking at his duplicates, his 16-year-old son and 14-year-old daughter, through the rear-view mirror. Neither responded as Jeremy had his headset on as he stared out the window at the rocks and trees passing by. His window was slightly cracked, blowing his light brown hair in his face. Daniel turned around briefly to see his blank expression in the reflection of the back window. Jeremy raised his hand to rub his pointed nose and dropped it back in his lap lazily. His light gray eyes caught the light and he closed them. Alexis was Jeremy in female form, but without the chiseled jawline. She stared out her window intently at multiple cars going the opposite way down the mountain. Many had luggage stacked noticeably in their back seats or strapped on their roofs. A small red-headed boy locked eyes with her, his face pressed to the window as they drove by. "Hey, is anyone listening to me?" Daniel yelled. "I'm listening, Daddy." 4-year-old Alana said cheerfully, "Thank you, sweetheart. I want your brother and sister to listen too." Daniel replied softly. Alana reached around from the third row in her car seat and tugged on Jeremy's hoodie. He turned around annoyed, snatching off his headset. "Yes, Alana?" he asked, looking at his baby sister. "Daddy wants you to listen," she said, smiling. "Alana, sit back," Jeanette said firmly from the passenger's seat. "Thank you, sweetheart," Daniel said, locking eyes with Alana through the rear view mirror. "Yeah," Jeremy asked with a stiff tone. "I asked how long are you two going TOB like this?" Daniel yelled out to get Alexis's attention as well. It worked as Alexis turned from the window frowning. "You already know we don't want this, Dad. What do you expect us to say?" Alexis responded angrily. "Maybe try to be a little positive? That's what we agreed on here." Daniel said, "No, that's what you and Jeanette agreed on." Jeremy responded, rolling his eyes. "The house is really beautiful and modern. The school is excellent too. I don't think you guys will hate it." Jeanette said softly. "No one's talking to you, Jeanette." Jeremy responded harshly. "Hey, what did I tell you about talking to her like that, huh?" Daniel yelled. Alana looked dejected in the back. "Whatever." Jeremy responded coldly, slamming his head back into his seat. "No, it's not whatever, Jeremy. I'm sick of your attitude. We're not your little friends, so talk to us with some respect, or you'll be starting your new life here grounded." Daniel demanded angrily. "Let's just all calm down. We're all tired from the long drive. We're all hungry. Let's stop and get food when we get to the town and decompress," Jeanette said, twisting a strand of her afro-textured hair. The car fell silent as they continued to drive up the mountain another 40 minutes before making it to the scenic and charming town of Eastlake. As they drove, and they noticed many residents running about, some holding boxes, others large bags. One middle-aged woman wearing a long skirt snatched her son harshly by the arm as they scurried across the street. Some people looked at them in their van strangely as they drove to Savannah's diner. Upon pulling into the empty parking lot, they read the door, which had a large white sign on it that read "Closed" in bold red letters. "Dad, what's going on? Why is everyone rushing around? Why is the restaurant closed when it says it's supposed to be open until 10 p.m. Online?" Alexis asked, looking out her window. "I don't know, but we'll just get something quick at the store," Daniel said, pulling out of the deserted parking lot. Daniel and Jeanette looked at each other concerned, but remained quiet as they used the car navigation to guide them a few blocks to Edward's grocery store, which was a lot smaller than any grocery store they had been to in the city. Daniel instructed the children to stay in the van while he and Jeanette ran in and grabbed a few things. Their new house already had a few of their kitchen supplies, including some dry goods they had packed from their old home. He and Jeanette had already been up there a few days prior and had unpacked and prepared most rooms. Only a few boxes remained. As they exited the van, a large modern RV pulled in awkwardly. 4 attractive young adults exited, 2 females and 2 males. They entered the store laughing. Alexis picked up her headset and handed them to Alana and instructed her to put them on. Alana complied, as she loved listening to music, especially on her sister's headset. Once Alana was bobbing her little head and singing in her cute small voice, Alexis hit her brother on the arm harshly. "Hey, knock it off," she demanded. "Knock what off?" he asked angrily. "Your attitude towards Jeanette." "Oh, so you like her now? She's not that bad, you know. It's been 6 years. And she tried to get Dad to tell us." "What?" "I heard them arguing about it. Jeanette told Dad it was wrong for him to take the new job and move us far away from our relatives and friends without speaking to us about it first. Dad said it was for the betterment of the family, or some shit like that. They argued for like 3 days. Alexis said, sighing, "Really? Why didn't you say anything? Like you would actually listen to anyone but Sarah. Also, Jeanette said that Dad should fly Sarah out for your 17th birthday to make up for separating you two." Jeremy looked deflated. His face flushed red as he rubbed his hands through his hair. He breathed in deeply. "Fine. I'll apologize, but I don't want a relationship. New family unit bullshit Dad has been trying to push for 6 years. Daniel and Jeanette walked into the small grocery store, followed by the loud and snickering young adults who fell silent as they entered the mostly empty store. The shelves were nearly picked clean. A few people ran by holding large boxes. Jeanette looked at Daniel with a concerned look, her brown eyes glistening with worry. Daniel walked with Jeanette to a checkout line where an older gentleman was closing down his drawer. His name tag read Edward. "Oh, so you're the Edward," Daniel said jokingly, pointing to the sign on the wall. "Yes, who are you? I haven't seen you before." Edward answered nervously. "We're the Simon family. We just moved here from out west." You were supposed to be here a couple days ago, right?" "Yes, we had a few delays." "May I ask what's going on here? We need a few things." A pretty older woman with silver hair came briskly from the back of the store and whispered something in Edward's ear before looking at Daniel and Jeanette. Edward reached down and lifted up a large box filled with a few canned goods, peanut butter and jam, dry milk and bread. "Take this. It's almost sunset. You have just enough time to make it to your home." Edward said, I'm sorry, but what the hell is going on here?" Jeanette asked. "Hi, I'm Mayor Paula. There have been some recent issues. We're on a red alert right now. The whole town is going on lockdown until Monday," the silver-headed woman said nervously. She ran over to the 4 young adults who had found a few snack items in the store and ushered them quickly to the second checkout lane. "Babe, I don't like this. Maybe we need to head out of town and stay in a hotel until Monday," Jeanette said, looking at Daniel. "No, there isn't time. It will be dark before you reach the bottom of the mountain. Go home. Lock every door that leads to outside. Don't open the doors for no one or nothing until Monday," Edward said, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He slammed the cashier drawer shut. "We haven't paid yet," Daniel said in a quivering voice. "Come back and pay Monday morning," Edward said, grabbing some keys from beside the register. Daniel quickly grabbed the box as he and Jeanette nervously ran from the store. He shoved the box beside a startled Alana. He and Jeanette jumped in their seats and he took off towards their new home. They remained silent, but the tension in the van was palpable. "Dad, what's wrong?" Jeremy asked, frowning. "Nothing, son. Daniel responded, "Jeanette, is everything okay?" Alexis asked. Jeanette turned around and gave a weak smile but remained silent. She rubbed the gold cross necklace that laid on her chest, something she did only when she was nervous. Alexis and Jeremy looked at one another as they passed by a few remaining town people running into their homes. Alexis' heart started beating quickly. She steadied herself by taking deliberate, thoughtful breaths in and out to calm down. It was a technique Jeanette had taught her, Jeremy, and Alana. They reached the beautiful two-floor wood and stone house as the sky turned into a brilliant array of pink, deep purple, orange, and red. "Get out of the car," grabbed the box Jeremy quickly. Daniel said sternly. Without argument, they exited the van quickly. Jeremy grabbed the large and heavy box that was next to Alana as Jeanette unbuckled her from the other side. Alexis and Daniel grabbed the remaining backpacks and bags. Daniel hurried them up the walkway and hastily pressed in the door code. They all went inside. Daniel closed the door and activated the lock and alarm code. A door camera was already operational. Jeanette ran to the kitchen and checked the locks on the double glass doors leading to the outside decking. The children watched them in nervous silence. "Don't open the door part." 2. "Babe, go upstairs and check that the balcony doors in the master bedroom are locked." Jeanette yelled to Daniel. Daniel sprinted upstairs, while Jeanette looked nervously through the glass kitchen doors. After a few minutes, Daniel came back downstairs and confirmed that the doors were closed and locked. They both looked slightly relieved to the children's confusion. "Is anyone going to explain what's wrong?" Jeremy asked concerned. Daniel and Jeanette looked at one another. Alexis held Alana's hand, worry plastered across her face. Daniel shook his head no to Jeanette, who looked annoyed. She cleared her throat and turned to the children. "Actually, we're not sure. We were told by the store owner and the town mayor that the town is in some kind of lockdown till Monday morning." She explained. "What? Why?" Alexis asked. Looking at Jeanette with irritation, Daniel turned to Alexis. "We don't know, sweetheart, but I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. We'll just stay put until Monday and find out more than okay." "Nothing to worry about? Is that why everyone was running around earlier? It seems weird, Dad." Jeremy said, frowning. "That's enough. We're all in the house safely. Let's just get settled in and worry about everything else later, okay?" Daniel said, walking over to grab the food box. "Are you saying we can't leave the house until Monday? Like, not even go outside?" Alexis asked, looking past Daniel out of a window at the sun setting. "Like I said, we'll stay put in the house until Monday. We'll find out more then," Daniel reiterated, placing the food box on the kitchen counter. "Mama, I'm hungry," Alana announced loudly. She looked a bit dismayed. "Okay, baby. I'll fix us all something quick to eat," Jeanette said, walking to the kitchen sink. "Whatever. Which room is mine?" Jeremy asked, frustrated. "Upstairs. Last room on the left." Jeanette responded. "Thanks." Jeremy grabbed his backpack and sprinted upstairs. The hallway was carpeted with a soft, lush tan carpet. To his immediate left was a large bathroom with a long faux marble countertop and gray wood cabinets. On the far left, connected to the bathroom wall on top of the counter, sat a matching gray wood cabinet tower. A bit further down to his right was the master bedroom, which was spacious with its own bathroom. Next to the master bedroom was Alana's bedroom, all decked out in pink and purple. Across from her bedroom was Alexis's sky blue room, and next to hers was his. Jeremy was aware that Jeanette had been in charge of decoration for the new house and was skeptical. Stepping into his room, he was blown away as it was quite nice. It was much larger than the one he had before and was decorated tastefully in his favorite colors of red and gray. His full-size bed had new sheets in red, gray, blue, and white stripes and was pushed up to a red accent wall. The other walls were a light gray color with his desk and other furniture having red detailing. It was stylish, mature, and modern. Jeanette had done a great job. Jeremy felt a bit of sadness in his heart when he looked on a carefully decorated shelf above his desk. A picture of his late mom holding him sat there in a new silver frame. Jeanette had placed it there for him. Jeremy threw his backpack in his desk chair and plopped on his bed and called Sarah. She answered immediately and cheerfully. They expressed how much they missed one another, and Jeremy explained how he felt guilty towards Jeanette and how things were weird in the town. Alexis hooked up the television under the careful management of Alana, while Jeanette warmed up some cans of beef and vegetable stew she found in the food box. Daniel toasted and buttered some bread. They whispered to one another harshly in the kitchen as Alexis pretended not to hear. Once again, Daniel wanted to keep them in the dark, while Jeanette wanted to be open. The lower floor of the house was an open floor plan with the living room and kitchen in full view of one another. The only divider being a large, glass dining table and kitchen counters that could double as a bar stool area. Alexis succeeded in connecting the television and turned it on. They had cable installed, so she turned to a children's channel for Alana. They both sat on the large sectional sofa, cuddled up together watching cartoons. "Dinner is ready," Jeanette yelled out loudly, pouring soup carefully into bowls. Alana jumped from the sectional happily and skipped to the table. Alexis walked to the bottom of the staircase and yelled up loudly for Jeremy. He came out of his room with his earpiece in, chatting with Sarah. They all sat at the dining table, said a quick prayer, and ate with enthusiasm. Jeremy listened to Sarah explain what was going down at school. Jeanette blew on Alana's soup for her, so it wouldn't be too hot between eating her own meal, and Daniel talked to Alexis about what extracurricular activities she could choose in the new town. The sun had finally set, and the outside lights automatically turned on, illuminating the back deck and front porch. Boom, boom, boom. Help. A loud banging on the door and a desperate cry caused everyone to drop their spoons. Daniel, Jeanette, Jeremy, and Alexis jumped from their chairs. Alana looked frightened. "Please help us." The voices of a young man and woman screamed from the front door. Daniel and Jeanette ran to the door and looked at the camera monitor. On the porch stood the 4 young adults that had been at the store earlier. One of the young women, the brunette, looked badly injured. Her body seemed covered in cuts, her clothing nearly ripped off. The rest looked equally disheveled. Oh my God, what do we do?" Jeanette asked Daniel. "Well, we have to help them," he said, opening the alarm covering. "Wait, we aren't supposed to open the door for anyone or anything, remember?" Jeanette exclaimed. "Jeanette, you're a nurse. How can you leave them out there injured? One of you call 911, quick." Daniel demanded, disarming the alarm code. Jeanette ran over to the table and lifted a frightened Alana from her chair. Sarah asked what was wrong as Jeremy explained he would have to call her back. Before he could say goodbye, his phone hung up. The television suddenly displayed static. Alexis attempted to dial 911, but to no avail as her phone suddenly had no service. Daniel opened the door, and a young woman with curly blonde hair ran in crying. She reached out to assist a muscular, dark-haired young man with their injured friend, when suddenly a thick vine-like entity appeared from the darkness. It was mostly transparent, only its outline was visible. It crept swiftly along the ground and let out a sound of many voices. The blonde young woman let out a horrible shriek as the entity grabbed the injured young woman, snatching her violently from their hands. The injured young woman screamed wildly as her friends and Daniel attempted to reach for her. She dug in with her nails into the concrete walkway, ripping some of them off along the way. The entity lifted her up, grabbed her limbs, and ripped her apart. Her blood splattered across the walkway as the many voices shrieked loudly. Jeanette screamed from within the house and covered Alana's face in her chest. Jeremy ran over to Alexis, who was screaming and crying. Daniel, the blonde young woman, the muscular dark-haired young man, and their brown-haired male friend ran into the house screaming. Before Daniel could close the door, the entity reached in, grabbed the muscular young man, and violently snatched him into the night. The many voices shrieking thunderously. Daniel slammed the door shut harshly. With shaking fingers, he reactivated the alarm code. He looked at the monitor, but it had gone to black. Only the sound of many incoherent voices could be heard from the other side of the door. The blonde young woman collapsed to her knees crying as the brown-haired young man held her. "Don't open the door, Part 3. Alana cried loudly into Jeanette's chest as she rubbed her curly head tenderly. She sat Alana down in the chair and instructed her to practice her breathing exercises. Alana did so between sobs and hicks. Daniel stood frozen at the front door, his hands pressed tightly against it, listening to the many incoherent voices outside. They seemed to be whispering and screaming at the same time. Jeanette walked over briskly to check on Jeremy and Alexis. Alexis stood frozen in place, shaking and crying. Jeanette guided her gently to the sectional and sat her down. She instructed Jeremy to get a few glasses of water. Jeremy jumped and then complied as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. His mouth had gone dry. He could neither cry nor speak. Jeanette went over to the blonde young woman and brown-haired young man. She crouched down and inspected them for injuries. The young woman was shaking violently. The young man had tears streaming down his handsome face. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Jeanette asked in a quivering voice. I don't think so." The young woman responded, sobbing loudly. The young man shook his head no. Jeremy handed Alexis a cup of water with a shaking right hand. She accepted it and started taking small sips. "Remember, breathe slowly, in and out. Steady yourself. You too," Jeanette reminded Alexis and instructed the young woman who was beginning to hyperventilate. Daniel finally pulled himself from the door. His eyes looked wild. Some of his hair laid scruffily on his forehead. He paced back and forth, anxiously grabbing his head. "May I know your names?" Jeanette asked softly. "I'm Sophia." The young woman responded, trying to breathe in and out. "I'm Eric," the young man said, swiping tears from his face. "Daniel, help me get them on the sofa, please," Jeanette asked. Daniel walked over nervously and helped Jeanette lift Sophia from the floor. Eric got up by himself on shaky legs. They walked them over to the sofa and sat them next to Alexis. Jeremy handed them cups of water on a tray. Jeanette forced them to take a few sips to help them calm down a bit. Jeremy set the tray on the dining table and picked up Alana, who was still crying softly. He hugged her tightly, allowing her to rest her head on his right shoulder. Jeanette sat on the ottoman in front of Sophia and held her hand gently. "Can you tell us what happened?" Sophia let out a heavy breath. "My friends and I run an online channel where we search for supernatural phenomenon across the country. We heard a legend about this town a few years ago that something called the culling happens every 20 years. We didn't have much details, but heard some crazy supernatural stuff happens. We wanted to investigate and record some stuff for our channel. We didn't expect this." Sophia started crying hard again. Jeanette gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "What the hell is that? I mean, what was that out there?" Daniel finally spoke. "We don't know either. It attacked us in our RV. We tried driving away, but it blew out our tires. It grabbed my friend Melissa first, but she got away initially. Now both her and Jake are gone." Eric responded grievously. "We tried knocking on others' doors for help, but no one would help us," Sophia said through sobs. "It's okay, you're safe now," Jeanette said, feeling unsure. "Eric, help me. Please open the door." A feminine voice yelled out from outside the door. Eric and Sophia jumped up from the sofa and stared at the front door, eyes wide. "Melissa," Eric screamed. "Eric, I'm scared. Please help me. Open the door." "Melissa," Eric cried out, running towards the door. Daniel grabbed him harshly by the arm, snatching him back. "Is Melissa the young woman that was grabbed out there?" Daniel asked sternly. "Let me go," Eric demanded. "Yes, that was Melissa," Sophia responded, shocked. "Melissa is dead. We all saw it. You won't open that door," Daniel said, grabbing Eric's arm harder. But don't you hear her too?" Eric asked, looking towards the door. Alexis and Jeanette both stood up and stared towards the door in fear. "That's not Melissa," Jeanette said, shivering. "Please, Help me! Open the door! The voice rang out louder. A loud knocking started, vibrating the whole wall. Alexis screamed as she looked wide-eyed at the kitchen doors, causing everyone else to turn that way. The translucent entity slowly crept up the glass doors, waving its tendrils like hundreds of cobras, swaying to the vibrations of the pungi as it climbed higher and higher. Jeremy hit Alana's face and instructed her to cover her ears as the many voices grew louder and louder. Open the door! Many voices screamed. Open the door! Everyone covered their ears. Open the door! Eric, please, I need help. Open the door! Melissa's desperate voice returned, pleading, as the door shook violently. Why is this happening? Sophia yelled out with her hands pinned tightly to the sides of her head. I'm hurt, help me. Open the door. It was now Jake's voice that pleaded desperately. Jeremy sat in the corner with Alana between the dining table and counter. He held her tightly while she cried, her small hands covering her ears. He began singing her favorite song loudly in an attempt to drown out the voices. Jeanette grabbed Alexis and sat back down on the sofa. She held her, leaning her head on her shoulder. Daniel looked out of the glass kitchen doors furiously. He let go of Eric's arm and ran upstairs, taking 2 steps at a time. What are you doing? Jeanette yelled, but no response. The voices continued their demand, sometimes in unison, sometimes in the voice of Melissa or Jake. Sophia ran to Eric and pulled him away from the door and made him sit back on the sofa. She lifted his hands to his ears and covered them. He closed his eyes as tears streamed down his cheeks. Daniel returned after a few minutes, sweating heavily and nearly falling down the stairs. In his hands, he held a king-size bedsheet, a hammer, and a box of nails. Help me with this, somebody, Daniel demanded as he ran towards the kitchen doors. Jeremy stood up slowly, still holding Alana. He walked over and sat her on Alexis's lap. Alana wrapped around Alexis like a baby koala. Jeremy ran to Daniel. He tried to ignore the entity as their presence at the door made it swerve and rattle violently. Standing on the top of his toes, he held the sheet in place over the door while Daniel nailed it in place, creating a covering. The entity let out a deafening shriek, causing Daniel to drop the hammer and grab his ears. Everyone held their ears tightly as Alana screamed to the top of her lungs. Jeanette grabbed Alana's face and mouthed to her to breathe in and out. Alana looked into her mom's eyes and started her breathing exercises between hicks and sobs. Alexis' hands were pinned so tightly to her ears that her face and palms had become red. Sophia held her ears. Her pretty face was hidden by her curls that were tossed wildly across her head as she rocked vigorously back and forth. Jeremy ran from the door, his hands pinned tightly to the sides of his face, and joined his sister on the sofa. Daniel crouched down, holding his ears tightly. Jeanette winced in pain from the noise as she continued to instruct Alana to breathe. The door shook violently, the voices screaming incoherently and boisterously. Open the door! A deep and inhuman voice screamed out demandingly, and then suddenly there was silence. Don't open the door part. 4. The house was quiet as they all listened intently for the entity. The silence was just as deafening as the horrific shrieking of the many voices. 10 seconds passed by, then 15, then 20, still nothing. 25 seconds passed by, and they all slowly dropped their hands from their ears and looked around at one another. 30 seconds, just the sound of their breathing and their own heartbeats. I think it's over, Eric said softly. Suddenly, the front door and kitchen doors started to shake violently. They all screamed in unison, and so did the entity, mimicking their cries. Daniel ran away from the kitchen into the living room, breathing heavily. The shaking ended as quickly as it started, and they were met with silence once more. Jeanette fought back the desire to cry as she comforted the children. Sophia continued to rock anxiously on the sofa, while Eric digged into his pants nervously with his nails, making light scraping sounds across his khakis. Daniel stood silently in the middle of the living room, staring at the small window at the top of the front door. The entity swayed back and forth there, before slowly retreating out of his view. Daniel walked to the door slowly with shaky legs and sweaty palms. He carefully peeked out of the small window in the door, but couldn't see anything. He moved to the right of the door and slightly pulled back the curtain to a large window and peeked out carefully. The entity was slowly retreating away from the house, into the darkness, dragging with it the remaining pieces of Melissa and what he assumed was Jake. He could see the glimmer of blood splattered across the gray walkway and suddenly felt queasy as he remembered what he had witnessed earlier. He closed the curtain back and turned around. "It's leaving. For now," Daniel said, holding back the desire to throw up. "Are you sure?" Jeanette asked calmly, fear and worry etched into her beautiful face. Daniel shook his head yes. They all remained still and quiet for a while and just listened. Alana silently cried herself to sleep on Alexis's shoulder. The camera monitor suddenly displayed the front porch again, and the static on the television cleared as a cartoon suddenly and loudly played, causing everyone to jump in fear. Alexis jumped hard, waking Alana, who looked around in terror. Alexis felt around nervously on the sofa between her and Jeremy until she found a remote where she swiftly cut off the television. They all sat in silence again, listening. "We should leave while it's gone," Jeremy proclaimed. "No, we're not opening the door. At all," Daniel said, looking at his son. "Mommy, I want to go home." Alana said sadly, looking at Jeanette. "We are home, baby." She replied softly, "No, to our other home, the one with no monster." Alana replied, her small bottom lip quivering. Daniel ran over and lifted her from Alexis's lap and hugged her. Jeanette wiped the tears from Alexis's cheeks and reached over to grab Jeremy's hand. She paused before doing so, remembering he didn't care for her touching him too much. To her surprise, he grabbed her hand instead and held it tight. Tears streamed down his face. Jeanette switched places with Alexis and slowly reached over to hug him. Jeremy melted into her shoulder and wept there for a few seconds before pulling away gently. "Are you okay?" Jeanette asked. "Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks. I want to go back home too." Jeremy replied, staring angrily at his father. "What should we do now?" asked Sophia. "We keep the doors closed until Monday. That's what we were told. That's what we'll do." Jeanette responded, swiping tears from her own face. The night was still early, but everyone felt exhausted. Jeanette offered Sophia and Eric some food. They declined, but she made them eat the remaining soup that was still on the stove top. She rewarmed the unfinished bowls of soup in the microwave, and they all finished their meal at the dining table in awkward and fearful silence. Jeremy continued to throw daggers at Daniel with his eyes. Ignoring his attitude, Daniel refused to make eye contact with his son. Alexis checked her phone. Still no service. She announced in a hoarse voice, "We should all get some rest." Jeanette said, looking at the time on the wall. It read 9:32 p.m. "Where do we sleep?" "I mean, anywhere is fine." Sophia asked awkwardly while Eric nodded in agreement. "Our daughter will be with us tonight, so you can sleep in her room. She has bunk beds. They're princess-themed. Hope you don't mind?" Jeanette said, directing her question to Eric. "No, I don't. Thank you." Eric replied. "Can I sleep in the room with you too?" Alexis asked Jeanette nervously. Me too, please." Jeremy said, looking embarrassed. "Of course, right, honey?" Jeanette said, looking at Daniel. "Yes, of course. Go and get your sleeping bags. They should be in your closets." He responded. Alexis and Jeremy got up from the table and went upstairs together carefully. They looked around as if they expected the entity to somehow be up there waiting. They gathered their sleeping bags and phone chargers swiftly, while Jeanette prepared clean towels, toothbrushes, and clothes for Sophia and Eric. Everyone cleaned themselves in the downstairs and upstairs bathrooms and retired to their respective sleeping areas. The balcony doors in the master bedroom came with the privacy blinds that Daniel had already closed. The doors were locked, though Daniel tied a cord around the handles for extra security. Alana laid exhaustedly between Jeanette and Daniel as Jeanette stroked her back and head. She soon fell asleep. Alexis and Jeremy laid their sleeping bags next to one another beside the hallway door, away from the balcony doors. Despite still being afraid, they soon fell asleep as well. Only the soft sobs of Sophia could be heard, and then nothing. The whole house was quiet as they all succumbed to their weariness. The night turned into day, and then Saturday arrived. Don't open the door part. 5. Saturday. Mommy, wake up. Alana shook Jeanette, softly pulling her from her sleep. Jeanette sat up in bed and wiped her eyes. She looked around the room. Daniel, Jeremy, and Alexis were still asleep. The sun had risen, and light was shining through the window curtain and door blinds. Jeanette looked at her nightstand clock, and the time read 7:36 a.m. Alana's curly hair laid wildly across her head as her small hand caressed Jeanette's arm gently. "Yes, baby? What's wrong?" Jeanette asked, running her fingers through Alana's hair. "I'm hungry," she said softly. "Okay, let Mama go and find breakfast for everyone, okay?" She responded. Jeanette carefully got out of bed, stepping over Alexis and Jeremy. She paused before reaching the door as fear gripped her. She didn't want to go downstairs alone. She turned around and walked stealthily to Daniel's side of the bed and gently shook him awake. His eyes jumped open, and he abruptly sat up in bed, startling her and Alana. His eyes still looked tired as he looked around the room in confusion. "Babe, are you okay?" Jeanette whispered, concerned. Yeah? Sorry, I was having a nightmare. I'm awake now," he replied, shaking his head and rubbing his face. "Can you come downstairs with me while I make breakfast, please? I don't want to go alone." "Yeah, of course. Of course." Daniel replied, carefully getting out of the bed. Jeanette instructed Alana to stay in the room with her siblings until they came and got them. She was to stay in the bed unless she needed to use the master bathroom. She wasn't to touch the door or the windows. If anything happened, she needed to immediately wake her siblings. Alana confirmed and laid back down, holding Jeanette's pillow like a stuffed animal in her arms. Jeanette and Daniel peeked in on Sophia and Eric. They slept soundly in Alana's room. They walked quietly down the stairs where Jeanette prepared oatmeal and toast for the house. Daniel checked out the windows for the entity, but everything looked normal except the bloodstains on the walkway. The street was empty, not a movement nor sound. By 8:20 a.m., Jeanette and Daniel had set the table and awakened the house for breakfast. Everyone came downstairs awkwardly and quietly as if the night before was just a shared nightmare. They chatted in small whispers, mostly learning more about the channel Sophia. Eric and their friends ran. Jeanette wanted to know more information about the culling, but Sophia and Eric's knowledge was limited to campfire tales and hearsay. Nothing like what they had experienced the night before. Breakfast ended and Jeanette, Daniel, and the children headed upstairs to wash up and dress, while Sophia and Eric used the downstairs bathroom. "I'm done," Eric said, leaving the bathroom to Sophia. "Thanks," she said, going in after him. Eric sat on the sofa listening to the sound of running water coming from the bathrooms. His thoughts shifted to Jake and Melissa, especially Melissa with the sprinkle of freckles that adorned her nose, her dark and sultry eyes, her naturally dark pink lips, and her thick, slightly wavy brunette hair. She was beautiful. She had always been so beautiful to him. Tears rolled down Eric's cheeks. He buried his face in his hands. He was suddenly filled with deep sorrow and regret when a familiar voice cried out at the door. "Eric, it's me, Melissa. I got away, but I'm hurt. Please let me in." Eric jumped up from the sofa and stood frozen in silence. "Eric, can you hear me? Please help me." He ran to the door and looked intently at the monitor, but it had gone to black once more. He shook his head no and briskly turned away. "Eric, please. I need help. Please, Eric, open the door." Eric covered his ears as tears streamed down his face. "Eric, please. I'm so scared. Eric, please open the door." Eric kneeled down holding his ears, crying harder. Eric, I need you. Eric dropped his hands and turned towards the door. Tears streamed down his face. His hands shook as he touched the door, leaning against it. Melissa, I'm so sorry, he replied in tears. Eric, please. I love you. I love you, Eric. Melissa. Eric reached for the lock when he felt the firm grip of Sophia's hand on his forearm. No, Eric, don't. Sophia screamed. Melissa needs me. I can't just abandon her. Eric cried desperately. That's not Melissa, Eric. Melissa is dead. Sophia cried out. No, no, she's not. Sophia tugged on Eric's arm strenuously, attempting to pull him away from the door. Eric turned around and pushed her back, harshly knocking her to the ground as Daniel, Jeanette, and the children ran from upstairs after hearing the commotion. Eric undid the lock as Daniel jumped down the stairs desperately to reach him. Jeanette helped Sophia off the floor. No, Eric, don't open the door. Daniel, Jeanette, Jeremy, Alexis, and Sophia cried in unison. Eric swung the door open, setting off the alarm. The morning light poured in along with the mostly invisible entity that cried out in many voices with a shriek and the voice of Melissa repeating, I love you, Eric. I love you. I love you, Eric. Over and over again. Alana screamed as the entity grabbed Eric by the legs, snatching him to the ground violently. He screamed loudly as Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia grabbed his arms, pulling him hard. Go upstairs. Lock yourself in a room now with your sister. Jeanette yelled at the children. Alana screamed and cried, running up the stairs into the bathroom. Jeremy and Alexis ran after her. Afraid, Alexis slammed the door and locked it. Jeremy grabbed a thick beach towel from the cabinet tower, rolled it quickly and stuffed as much of it as he could under the small crack under the door. Alana cried profusely as Alexis attempted to calm her down through breathing exercises, though she was crying herself. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia pulled Eric forcefully, walking backwards towards the staircase. Eric screamed out as a loud rip, and the smell of blood, revealed the entity, has severed his right leg from above the knee down. Blood stained the tan stairway carpet as part of the entity dragged the severed limb out the door while other parts slowly crept into the house, shrieking in many incoherent voices. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia dragged Eric up the stairs swiftly as he screamed, blood pouring from his leg. They ran into the master bedroom and slammed the door, locking it. Oh my God! Oh my God! What are we going to do? Sophia cried out, panicked. Calm down. I'm a nurse practitioner. We need to control the bleeding, Jeanette said, shaking as she looked at Eric's leg. The bathroom. The entity moved slowly up the stairs, silencing the alarm and shaking the doors violently. Open the door, it demanded in many inhuman voices. Alana's screams turned into coughing and wheezing, her cheeks flushed as she collapsed into her sister's arms. Oh my God, Jeremy! She's having an asthma attack. Alexis cried. Don't open the door part. 6. The bathroom. Oh my God, Jeremy! She's having an asthma attack. Alexis cried. The entity cried out loudly at the door. Open the door. Calm down. Jeanette leaves medicine for her in almost every room. Jeremy said, opening the medicine cabinet with shaking hands. In the cabinet was an unopened prescription of albuterol. Jeremy grabbed it and opened it. Alana wheezed as sweat gathered on her forehead. Her lips turned a pale blue as Alexis cried, holding Alana in her arms. Alana breathed. Alexis screamed out, Open the door! Open the door! Open the door! The entity demanded. The master bedroom. Quick! Hand me the clean towels from the bathroom, Daniel. Jeanette screamed, tearing open the rest of Eric's pants leg to fully expose the severed area. The entity shook the bedroom and balcony doors violently, causing goosebumps to cover Sophia and Jeanette. They tried their best to ignore its demands as they worked to stabilize Eric. Daniel ran from the bathroom with a stack of clean, folded bath towels in his hands. Jeanette grabbed one and carefully applied pressure to Eric's bleeding, elevated, residual limb. Eric screamed out in pain, tears rolling down the sides of his face. Sweat covered his forehead and body as his lips paled. Blood quickly stained the towel and dripped on the already bloodied carpet. Jeanette added another towel and instructed Sophia to take over applying pressure. "Take off your belt," Jeanette instructed Daniel. Daniel threw the remaining towels on the bed and quickly undid his belt and handed it to Jeanette. She fastened the belt tightly, 2 inches above the severed site, and tightened it. Eric screamed louder, drool escaping his mouth. His eyes rolled back in his head as he blacked out. "Oh my God! Is he dead?" Sophia cried out. Daniel joined Jeanette and Sophia on the floor and grabbed Eric's wrist. He checked his pulse carefully with shaking fingers. "He's alive," he said solemnly. "Mommy, mommy, mommy, I can't breathe." Alana's voice cried out from the outside of the bedroom door. Jeanette looked up from Eric's leg at the door with teary eyes. "Alana," she said softly, "the bathroom." Jeremy pulled the bathroom cabinet drawers open one by one, swiftly looking for the small face mask and spacer attachment that connected to the inhaler. Neither drawer had it, to his dismay. Alana's wheezing intensified as her face and lips turned blue. "Jeremy, please hurry," Alexis screamed out. "Honey, Mommy can help you. Open the door." Jeanette's voice cried out from outside the bathroom door. Jeremy ignored it and looked desperately in the cabinet under the sink. Alexis stared at the door, shivering. Jeremy grabbed a large, white zipped-up bag. Inside were several small asthma spacer mask attachments. Jeremy grabbed one quickly. He shook the albuterol vigorously before letting out 3 puffs into the air. He attached it to the spacer and grabbed Alana from Alexis's arms. He held her small body as she wheezed, desperation, tears, and fear in her eyes. He placed the mouthpiece firmly over her mouth and nose and pressed the canister, releasing the medicine for her to breathe in. "Come on, breathe, Alana," Jeremy cried out. "We're here. We can help. Open the door." The voices of Daniel and Jeanette cried out from behind the bathroom door in unison. Tears rolled down Alana's face as she inhaled the medicine into her lungs. Jeremy counted mentally 122nd before releasing another puff of medicine into the spacer. "Open the door, kids. Open the door." The voices of Daniel and Jeanette demanded angrily. Alana's wheezing slowly stopped as her breathing stabilized. After a few seconds, Jeremy removed the mask and held Alana close. A rush of emotions hit him as he cried along with his sisters as they listened to the entity scream fiercely in the hallway. The master bedroom. "Alana?" Jeanette screamed out. "That's not Alana," Daniel said, grabbing Jeanette's face. Jeanette looked at him with tears in her eyes and nodded her head in agreement. "It's not Alana," she repeated. Jeanette tightened the belt a bit more until the bleeding stopped. Sophia grabbed a clean towel from the bed and replaced the soaked ones. Jeanette carefully wrapped Eric's residual limb with the towels. She motioned for Sophia to hand her the pillows on the bed, which she used to prop the leg up on. Eric remained unconscious on the carpet, his face pale and sweaty, his clothes soaked in his own blood. "We stopped the bleeding, but I don't know how long he can make it without emergency medical care. He lost a lot of blood already," Jeanette said sadly. Sophia cried softly as she wiped blood from her hands on an unused towel. Daniel placed a small pillow under Eric's head. "Dad, we're hurt. Please open the door." The voice of Jeremy and Alexis cried out from the hallway. "What about the children, Daniel? What about our children?" Jeanette asked, the realization of their separation kicking in. Daniel looked angrily at the door and reached down to assist a blood-covered Jeanette off of the floor. She stood up on wobbly legs. "Our children are intelligent. As long as they're together, they will be okay," he replied, fighting back tears. Tears rolled down Jeanette's cheeks as she walked slowly to the bathroom to wash off as the entity screamed angrily at the door. "Don't open the door part." 7. The bathroom. Jeremy held Alana until her breathing returned to normal. Alexis stood up shivering and walked to the sink. She grabbed a small, disposable floral bathroom cup from a stack Jeanette had neatly placed next to the cabinet tower. She filled it up with lukewarm water with a struggle, as her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She helped Alana up from Jeremy's arms and had her rinse her mouth. The entity shrieked insistently at the door in many incoherent voices. The voices both subtle and deafening. Jeremy covered his ears as he sat on the side of the tub, his elbows on his lap. "Jelly Bean, it's me." The shrieking suddenly stopped, and a sweet and old familiar voice spoke out. Alexis dropped the small cup in the sink, and Jeremy looked up at the door. "Mom," he said, his voice quivering. "Hi, Jelly Bean. Hi, Sweet Pea, it's Mom." Alexis moved Alana away from the door as she stared at it with tears rolling down her pale cheeks. "Mom!" Jeremy repeated, sobbing. "Don't cry, Jelly Bean. I'm right here. If you open the door, we can be a family again. Mama misses you." "No, no." Alexis cried softly as Alana hugged her leg tightly. The bedroom. Sophia sat on the floor, holding Eric's clammy hand, as Daniel paced nervously by the balcony doors. Jeanette sat in the master bathroom on the toilet lid with the door closed and the water running. She cried quietly into her trembling hands. "Sweetheart, it's me, Savannah." A sweet voice spoke out from behind the balcony doors, stopping Daniel in his tracks. "Savannah." Daniel responded, stepping back slowly from the doors. "It's me. I'm here. I miss you and the children, honey. Please, won't you let me in?" Daniel started shivering as tears welled up in his eyes. It had been 8 years since he had heard his late wife's kind voice. It was soft and tranquil. Her voice matched the person she used to be before heart failure took her. Sophia ran to his side and placed a hand on his shoulder. He turned to look at her as tears escaped. He could still hear water running in the master bathroom. He wanted Jeanette. He needed Jeanette, but he couldn't make his legs or mouth move. "Honey, are you there? Please open the door so we can talk. It's been so long. I've missed you so much." Savannah's voice said emotionally. Daniel gave Sophia a reassuring look. She slowly removed her hand from his shoulder and walked back over to Eric. He was even paler. She checked his leg, and the bleeding was minimal. She grabbed his hand again and watched Daniel carefully as he stared gloomily at the balcony doors. "Daniel, do you miss me too? It's been so long since we've seen each other. Please, open the door so we can catch up." The voice pleaded softly as Daniel wept quietly. Suddenly, the master bathroom door swung open. Jeanette walked briskly to Daniel. She stood on the tip of her toes and grabbed his face, turning it away from the door, forcing their eyes to meet. He cried harder as she swiped away his tears with her thumbs. She pulled him into an embrace while he wept bitterly. The bathroom. "Jelly Bean, Sweet Pea, can you hear me? Are you angry I left you alone for so long? I'm back now, and we can be a family again, just like we used to be." Jeremy covered his ears tightly as tears poured from his eyes. Alexis looked at the door as Alana clung to her leg. "Why are you doing this?" Alexis screamed. "I want us to be a family again. Please open the door." The sweet voice of Savannah spoke out sadly. "No, you're not my mom. Why are you doing this? What do you want? Tell me." Alexis demanded in tears and anger. "Sweet Pea, I want you to open the door." "Stop calling me that. You don't have the right to call me that. Why are you doing this?" Alexis screamed as Alana cried, burying her face in Alexis's hip. "Don't talk to it," Jeremy exclaimed. "No, I want to know why." Alexis responded, looking back at a red-faced and teary-eyed Jeremy. "Why are you doing this?" Alexis screamed again, turning her attention back to the door. "Sweet Pea, I know you're angry. It's all right. Just open the door and everything will be okay. Savannah's voice responded sweetly. Alexis felt heat rise to her neck and face. Her entire body quivered in anger. She gently removed Alana from her side and nudged her over to Jeremy, who stood up. She walked slowly closer to the door. I said, "Stop calling me that. Answer me. Why are you doing this?" Alexis screamed in fury. "We want you. Open the door." Many voices responded loudly, followed by ear-piercing shrieking. Alana screamed and held her ears. Jeremy snatched Alexis from the door. They both crouched on the bathroom floor with Alana holding their ears tightly as the entity screeched and the door shook violently. The bedroom. Suddenly, Savannah's sweet voice stopped, and the entity shrieked loudly and angrily. Daniel and Jeanette ran from the balcony doors and joined Sophia, who was still next to Eric on the floor. Sophia held her ears and looked fearfully from door to door. Daniel and Jeanette huddled together and held their ears. The entity screamed with many voices, some sounding like pained wailing. "Open the door!" Savannah's voice cried, "Open the door!" It was Melissa's voice that screamed out next. "Open the door!" Jake's voice took its turn. Suddenly, Eric started breathing shallowly, his face and lips taking on a deathly pallor appearance. Sophia touched his forehead and found his skin cool to the touch, though sweat formed on his head and neck. "Oh my God! Something's wrong!" Sophia screamed out loudly, getting Jeanette and Daniel's attention. Jeanette and Daniel crouched down, wincing from the ear pain the shrieking of the entity was causing. Jeanette grabbed Eric's arm and checked his pulse. Her face immediately looked perturbed. His pulse is very weak. He lost too much blood. "I think we're losing him," she said morosely. Sophia's face flushed as she cried angrily. She grabbed Eric's hand and squeezed it as she stared at the balcony doors in hatred. "Don't open the door part." 8. The entity was unrelenting in its shrieking, its noise creating vibrations through the house that shook the walls and doors. Everyone was paralyzed in torment. Minutes turned into hours with no sign of the entity quieting. In the bathroom, Jeremy, Alexis, and Alana stuffed their ears with toilet tissue and sat huddled together on the bathroom floor, their backs to the bathtub and their faces to the rattling door. They sat quietly with their eyes closed tightly, their ears ringing and their heads pounding. In the master bedroom, Daniel laid on the bed in a fetal position with his head between two pillows to muffle the noise. Jeanette had recovered a pair of earplugs from her purse that she used months prior during an MRI. She changed Eric's bandages with shaking hands and an ever-clouding mind. Eric was declining quickly. He was sweating profusely and wincing in pain. Sophia used a broken pair of wireless earbuds she had in her jean pocket to stuff her ears. She rocked back and forth, anxiously pulling thin strands of her own hair out. She felt nauseous suddenly and stood up, almost falling over Eric. She ran to the master bathroom and vomited in the toilet, her head splitting from the thunderous sound. The bathroom. Jeremy felt like time was slipping. The noise was deafening and his head felt as though a sledgehammer had been taken to it. His stomach turned, but he couldn't move or even think straight. His mind was jumbled, his thoughts muddled. He was sure that they would all succumb to deafness by the end of it if the noise didn't stop soon. Alana had gone limp, her head laid lifelessly on Jeremy's side. Jeremy nudged Alexis, who struggled to open her eyes. In pain, they both checked Alana. Jeanette had taught them how to check for a pulse. Jeremy felt around nervously on her small wrist. Her pulse was steady. She had just blackened out. The lights flickered suddenly as Jeremy and Alexis looked around nervously. The floor and walls vibrated aggressively as the entity continued its horrid song of incoherent screams and clamoring. Blood started streaming from Alexis's nose, running over lips and down her chin onto her shirt. She tried to move but found herself incapacitated. Her ears were ringing, and so was her head. Her brain felt fried as a migraine moved from between her eyes to the top of her skull. The lights flickered again, and suddenly there was darkness and the entity stopped. The bedroom. Sophia fell on her knees as the lights went out, and the house turned into silence. A small window in the master bathroom revealed a serious thunderstorm outside that Sophia could see but not hear as her ears were ringing loudly. She didn't know the time, but the sky was very dark. She crawled on all fours out of the bathroom, eventually feeling the fluffiness of carpet under her hands. The feel of warm hands startled her, causing her to scream until she realized it was Jeanette. Jeanette's head was splitting. Her ears were ringing badly. She couldn't hear her own heart beating. The night had come quickly, or maybe it hadn't. She was confused. It was pitch black in the room. She had found Sophia and tried speaking to her, but neither of them could hear one another. Noise-induced tinnitus could last for hours or even days. Jeanette said a silent prayer that theirs wouldn't. She worried for the children. She prayed that they stayed vigilant and didn't open the door no matter what or who they heard on the other side. Jeanette grabbed Sophia's arm, and they both stood up on wobbly legs. Jeanette reached around in the dark until she found the familiar chest of Daniel before her. Daniel's ears felt as though they were buzzing. They felt warm, but he had checked earlier to make sure they weren't bleeding. He looked at the shadows cast by the streetlight and trees through the window curtain and door blinds. The trees moved swiftly in the wind as lightning made its presence known by sending streaks of majestic, pale blue light through the dark sky that he could just see through the small gaps that existed in the privacy blinds. His heart raced as he walked slowly around the large bed in hopes of finding Jeanette. He was happy when he felt her warm hand on his chest. He reached in his pocket clumsily until he retrieved his phone. Its bright light immediately illuminated the area. They stood in revealing Sophia there as well. Daniel pressed the flashlight icon, and the room was semi-visible once more. "Are you guys okay?" He asked Jeanette and Sophia in a loud voice. Jeanette and Sophia were able to hear his question, though it sounded muffled and covered by the intensely painful ringing in their ears. "We're okay," Jeanette screamed back. Jeanette grabbed Daniel's hand and looked at his phone. There was still no service. The sky was so dark, but the time only read 5:32 p.m. Jeanette walked over to the balcony doors cautiously and slowly opened the privacy blinds. The entity was pressed against the glass doors, slithering back and forth like hundreds of snakes. Jeanette's heart started pounding as she looked past the entity to the sky. It was storming badly. The wind was fierce as rain appeared to fall sideways and not straight down. The entity rattled violently at Jeanette's presence. She left the blinds open so the bright street light could shine into the room. She made her way back to Eric's side on the floor with Sophia, while Daniel stared at the entity. He placed his hand through the blinds on the door with his palm flat down. Part of the entity slapped hard against the door, pressing against where his hand met the glass, while the rest swayed rapidly in a synchronized dance. The bathroom. Jeremy was finally able to move. The noise had finally stopped, though his head still hurt like hell, and his ears rang loudly. He reached in his pants pocket, being careful of Alana, and retrieved his phone. He quickly turned on the flashlight, gaining some visuals in the bathroom. Alexis's nose was still bleeding heavily. He leaned Alana over on Alexis and got up carefully. He turned around and looked out of a small window above the tub. The sky was dark and it was storming out. He wondered if the entity had left temporarily due to the weather. He walked over to the cabinet tower and retrieved a clean-faced towel, which he handed to Alexis. Jeanette had taught them to lean forward instead of holding the head back like most believed you should do during a nosebleed. Alexis leaned forward and pinched her nose with the towel. Jeanette's words echoed in her thoughts. "Breathe through your mouth. Stay calm, sweetie." Alexis did so with a heavy heart. She missed Daniel, but she also missed Jeanette. She wasn't even sure they had made it safely to a room through the chaos. It was a thought she had refused to entertain, until now, as she sat in a semi-dark bathroom on the floor. "Do you think they're okay?" Alexis asked Jeremy loudly. He quickly looked at Alana to make sure she was still unconscious before answering. "Yeah, I think they're okay. They have to be. Okay." He responded. "I miss them. Dad and Jeanette. I miss them so much. Alexis said, fighting back tears. Jeremy shook his head slowly in agreement. Yeah, me too. Jeremy used his flashlight to look around in the medicine cabinet. Jeanette had organized it neatly. He had noticed earlier while looking for Alana's asthma medicine that a bottle of extra-strength acetaminophen was on the second shelf. He grabbed the bottle and opened it. He downed 2 500 milligrams pills and washed it down with a small cup of water. He was grateful the water connection was separate from the electricity. He offered Alexis some painkillers, which she accepted after removing the bloodied towel from her nose. Alana stirred on the floor and slowly awakened. She panicked as she realized the bathroom was dimly lit. It's okay, Alana, we're here. Jeremy comforted her. My head hurts. Alana responded, crying softly. Jeremy broke one of the acetaminophen pills in half and gave it to Alana to take. He laid her head on his chest as he prayed silently that the lights would come back on soon. The bedroom. Daniel, can you get the painkillers out the bathroom medicine cabinet, please? Jeanette asked as she dabbed sweat from Eric's brow. Daniel walked carefully to the master bathroom. He looked in the mirror, and even in the harsh shadows casted by his phone's light, he could tell he looked like crap. His eyes had dark circles, and his hair seemed unkempt. He opened the medicine cabinet and retrieved a new bottle of extra-strength acetaminophen. He took for it immediately, using his hands to drink water and splash his face. He filled 2 small disposable bathroom cups and headed to Jeanette and Sophia. He handed them the small cups of water and the medicine. They both took the medicine and returned their attention to Eric. Eric's breathing had become labored, and his leg had started bleeding once more. His eyes suddenly shot open. He looked around in the semi-lit room in confusion. Where am I? He asked fearfully. Eric, Sophia cried, holding his hand tightly. Where's everyone? He asked through struggled breaths. We're all here with you, Sophia responded, tears pouring from her eyes. Eric stared blankly onto the ceiling before his breathing stopped. His eyes dilated and his face relaxed. No, Sophia wailed. Jeanette started chest compressions and instructed Daniel to take over as she administered rescue breaths. They worked tirelessly, switching off for over 15 minutes, but to no avail as Eric could not be revived. The entity let out a loud scream at the balcony doors. It seemed to dance rapidly in celebration in the rain. I'm so sorry, Jeanette said sympathetically to Sophia. She reached over and pulled her into an embrace. Daniel wrapped Eric in a bedsheet and moved him into the large bathroom bathtub so that Sophia did not have to see him. The storm continued, thunder roaring loudly and lightning occasionally lighting up the dark sky as the entity occasionally shrieked and swayed rhythmically at the door. The minutes turned into hours with no change. Time seemed to move quickly and slowly at the same time as everyone eventually fell into restless sleep. And then it was Sunday. Don't open the door part. 9. The bedroom. Tap, tap, tap. Mr. and Mrs. Simon, it's me, Mayor Paula. It's Monday morning. Your living room door was open. Are you okay? Open up so we can help you. Hello. Mr. and Mrs. Simon. Daniel and Jeanette's eyes shot open as they laid face to face on their bed. The sound of heavy rain filled the room as dim sunlight streamed in through the window curtain and door blinds. Sophia sat up on the floor. She pulled Alexis's sleeping bag from over her face and head. Her curly hair laid wildly across her head. She stared at the bedroom door in bewilderment. Daniel and Jeanette sat up in bed and turned to face the door. Everyone remained quiet as the light but firm knocking continued. Hello. Are you guys okay in there? It's safe to come out now. Daniel and Jeanette remembered the voice of the beautiful silver-haired Major Paula they met briefly at Edward's grocery store. They looked at each other with furrowed brows and slowly got out of bed as Sophia groggily pulled herself from the floor. They all silently stared at the door and at each other. Daniel reached for his phone and then attempted to look at the home page where the date and time were displayed. However, the phone would not come on. They all had charged their phones via battery bank before sleeping, so that they would have use of their flashlights in case the electricity remained off. He pressed the side buttons hard, but the phone remained dead. "Check your phones. Check the date on them." Daniel whispered to Jeanette and Sophia as he pointed to his phone anxiously. Jeanette snatched her phone from her side table as Sophia reached around on the floor inside the sleeping bag until she retrieved her phone. They both looked down at them in surprise, as their phones were completely off as well. They attempted to no avail to turn them back on, but the phones remained unresponsive. The door knob shook lightly as the light knocking continued. "Hello. If someone is there, please answer. We're worried about you. Everything is okay now, so if you're injured, we can assist you." Mayor Paula's kind and concerned voice yelled out. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia remained silent as they stared at the door cautiously. The bathroom. Jeremy. Alana shook Jeremy's arm as he laid on the cold bathroom floor in a fetal position. He jerked and sat up briskly, looking around the dark bathroom. The only light streamed in through the small window above the bathtub. He looked over at Alexis, who was still asleep, her face turned to the wall. "What's wrong, Alana?" Jeremy asked in a raspy voice. "I'm hungry," Alana said softly. "Me too, but we can't leave the bathroom until Monday, remember? I'll get you some water, okay? But my stomach hurts." Alana replied sadly. "I'm sorry, Alana. There's nothing to eat in here, so drink some water and try not to think about it, okay?" Jeremy replied, getting up slowly from the floor. Tap, tap, tap. "Are you guys okay in there? It's safe to come out now. We made it to Monday." Jeanette's happy voice rang out from behind the bathroom door. "Mommy!" Alana yelled out, jumping up and sprinting to the door. Before she could get far, Alexis grabbed her arm firmly. She looked Alana in the eyes and shook her head, no pulling her back down to the ground. Jeremy reached in his pants pocket and pulled out his phone. He used his pointer finger to unlock the home screen, but the phone remained dark. "I think I used up my battery last night, Alexis. Check your phone," Jeremy said, looking worriedly at his sisters. Alexis reached in her jeans pocket and pulled out her phone. She had purposely left her phone off to conserve its battery so they could use her flashlight the next night. She pressed the on button firmly and waited anxiously for the familiar sound of her phone powering on. However, that sound never came. She pressed the on button harder, holding it down. Still nothing. She shook her head no at Jeremy, who turned to face the bathroom door. "Guys, everything is okay now. Open up so we can get out of this place." Daniel's voice yelled out. "You guys must be hungry because we are. Let's leave quickly so we can get some food and get out of here." Jeanette's voice yelled out. "Alana, baby, everything is okay now. Mommy knows you are scared, but I'm here. I'll take you out of here. It's okay to come out now." Jeanette's voice shouted out to Alana. Alana looked at Alexis with tears in her eyes. Alexis grabbed her and hugged her, whispering in her ear, "That's not Jeanette. That's not your mom. That's the monster." Alana trembled as Alexis held her tightly. Jeremy tried his phone once again, but it remained off. He was sure today was Sunday. Yesterday was Saturday. He was sure. He placed his phone angrily on the bathroom counter and filled a small cup full of water. He handed it to a teary-eyed Alana, who sat on Alexis's lap, glaring at the bathroom door. She took the cup and drank the water slowly. Jeremy joined his sisters on the floor and pulled his knees up to his chest. His stomach grumbled, and his ears still rung a bit from the noise they had all experienced. His body felt sore from the uncomfortable sleep he had managed to get on the cold bathroom floor. "When is this going to be over?" he said, looking miserably at Alexis. Alexis rubbed Alana's curls with her fingers. The blood from her nose had turned brown on her shirt. Her hair was oily and placed in a messy bun. Dark circles had gathered under her eyes. Tears formed as she looked at her brother. "I don't know, but we have to hold on for Alana. For Dad and Jeanette, right?" Yeah, we have to hold on, Jeremy said in sad agreement as he turned to look out the small window. Rain still poured outside as a thick fog gathered at the window. The bedroom. Mr. and Mrs. Simon, I contacted the emergency services. They're here to help you. Mayor Paula's voice called out from behind the bedroom door. The sound of sirens echoed loudly from outside, causing Jeanette to jump fearfully. Daniel ran to the window and pulled back the curtain. Rain hit the balcony ground, forming puddles. The sky was light gray as a thick fog swirled around outside. Daniel waved over Jeanette and Sophia. They both sprinted over and peeked out the window alongside Daniel. The sound of the sirens continued, but seeing anything past the fog was impossible. It seemed to get thicker and cloudier by the seconds. We're here to help. It's okay now. Open up so we can assist you. An unfamiliar man's voice cried out from the bedroom door. Daniel. Jeanette and Sophia squinted in an attempt to see any flashing emergency lights, but the fog only got thicker. Within seconds, they could only hear the heavy rain and could no longer see it falling. The bedroom became darker as the small amount of sunshine they had disappeared. Daniel closed the curtain and stepped back from the window and turned to face Jeanette and Sophia. This is a new development, he said fearfully. Sophia grabbed her head and a handful of her curls. She fell down on her knees as Jeanette crouched beside her. Jeanette grabbed her wrists and struggled to remove them from her hair. After doing so, she made Sophia look her in the eyes. Everything is going to be okay. Stay strong, Jeanette said valiantly. Sophia reached over and hugged Jeanette tightly. Jeanette rubbed her back gently as the sound of sirens blared outside, and the concerned voices of Mayor Paula and an unidentified male voice pleaded at the bedroom door. After a few minutes, everything stopped and a harrowing silence filled the room. Sophia and Jeanette pulled apart as they stared along with Daniel at the bedroom door. You know, everything is your fault, Sophia. Sophia's body trembled violently as the voices of Melissa and Jake spoke out in unison from behind the door. What kind of parents lose their own children? The angry voice of Savannah screamed out, causing Jeanette and Daniel to flinch. The bathroom. You know what, Jelly Bean and Sweet Pea? The truth is I died because of you. Taking care of you two drained me. You're the reason I left. The soft voice of Savannah uttered nonchalantly from behind the bathroom door. Jeremy and Alexis looked at the door, both trembling in anger and sadness as tears fell from their eyes. Alana attempted to comfort them by offering hugs. You're a bad girl, Alana. Mama is so disappointed in you. Jeanette's voice shouted out angrily, causing Alana to tear up. Jeremy grabbed Alana and laid her head on his shoulder. It's okay, Alana. It's just a monster. It's just a fucking monster, he said angrily, closing his eyes as Alexis stared blankly at the bathroom door. Don't open the door part. 10. The bedroom. Eric is dead because of you, Sophia. We're dead because of you. Melissa and Jake's voice spoke out hatefully in unison. Sophia covered her ears while Jeanette embraced her again, rubbing her back in comforting circles. You know you're a terrible mother, right, Jeanette? You can never be like me. That's why my son will never accept you. Ha ha, you can't even protect your own kid. Savannah's voice said coldly. Daniel crouched down facing Jeanette and gave her a weak but reassuring smile. Jeanette fought back tears as she continued to rub Sophia's back as she wept. Why are you lying to yourself, honey? You know you can never truly love her like you love me. You said I was the only one for you, remember? The voice of Savannah spoke out again. Daniel stared at the door, with tears welling in his eyes. His mouth felt dry and his thoughts were racing. The bathroom. You two were the biggest mistakes of my life, you know that. I would have been alive if I hadn't had you. Savannah's voice uttered coldly, vibrating the bathroom door. Jeremy kept his eyes closed as he softly caressed Alana's back. Tears fell softly down his cheeks as he listened to his late mother's voice verbalize vicious rhetoric. Alexis covered her ears tightly as tears escaped, wetting her cheeks. Alana, are you crying again? No one likes a crybaby, Alana. Jeanette's voice screamed out. Jeremy reminded Alana once more that it wasn't Jeanette, but the monster. Alana remained still and quiet as she laid on his shoulder. She cried silently as she looked at Alexis. Your mother is right. You are the reason she's dead. I didn't want to blame you, but it's the truth. You killed her, you worthless pieces of shit. Daniel's voice screamed out angrily, causing Jeremy, Alexis, and Alana to jump in fear. The bedroom. Alana's probably going to die, Jeanette, because you're such a terrible mother. Serves you right for trying to take what isn't yours. Savannah's voice spewed angrily. Savannah would never say things like that. Daniel yelled out, You betrayed me, Daniel. You betrayed our family, our children. You have forgotten your vows to me, your promises. You're a liar, Daniel. Savannah's voice screamed. Daniel fell backward on the ground. He placed his head in his hands. Jeanette let go of Sophia, who began rocking back and forth gently. She crawled over to Daniel and embraced him. He hugged Jeanette tightly as they both cried softly on each other's shoulder. It was your idea to come here, Sophia. We're dead because of you. You killed us. Melissa and Jake's voices screamed out. I died because of you, Sophia. Sophia. Jeanette and Daniel all looked towards the closed master bathroom door and back at the bedroom door because it was Eric's pained voice that spoke out next. I'm in so much pain, Sophia. How could you let this happen to me, to all of us? Eric's voice cried out resentfully. No, no, no! Sophia screamed out, rocking rapidly back and forth as she pulled her own hair out. Jeanette crawled back over to Sophia, but before she could embrace her, Daniel grabbed her instead and shook her harshly by her upper arms. Jeanette tried to pry his hands off as Sophia cried, but he wouldn't let go. Snap out of it, Sophia. Don't let this thing get to you. Don't let it control you. Daniel demanded. Sophia cried bitterly as Daniel finally let go. She took a few deep breaths in and out and swiped at the tears on her face. Okay. I'm okay, she said through hicks and sobs. Ha. What a strong man you are, Daniel. I see you can protect those women, but you couldn't protect me. You let me die, Daniel, your wife. You sat there useless as I died. Savannah's voice yelled. The bathroom. I want to go home. Alana cried loudly, pulling back from Jeremy's shoulder. I want to go home. Jeanette's voice mocked menacingly. All you do is cry and whine, Alana. You're such a brat. Daniel's voice yelled angrily. Alana cried harder at the voices. Feeling angry, Alexis looked irritably at the door. She turned her attention back to Alana, who Jeremy was comforting once again on his shoulder. Alana, don't listen to it. That's not our parents. Our parents love us and would never say such mean things, okay? Alana sniffed and shook her head in agreement. Oh, that's so nice, sweet pea. I guess I don't mean anything to you anymore since you have a new family now, right? You prefer Jeanette and her brat now, huh? Where's the loyalty, Alexis? After everything I've done for you, after I died because of you. Savannah's voice no longer sounded sweet, but turned deep and bitter. The door shook furiously as thunder roared outside. The walls and floor seemed to vibrate once again as the siblings huddled together. You're all gonna die. You know that, right? Just like you killed me. You're all going to starve to death in a filthy bathroom. Savannah's voice declared viciously. Open the door, sweet pea. Tears rolled down Alexis's cheeks as she closed her eyes and covered her ears. Open the door, Jelly Bean. Jeremy continued rubbing Alana's back in small, comforting circles. The way he witnessed Jeanette do it, and the way his own mom comforted him when he was little. It's okay, Alana. Mama won't be angry anymore if you open the door. Open the door, Alana. Alana closed her eyes and held Jeremy tightly. The bedroom. You can make it up to us by opening the door, Sophia. Melissa, Jake, and Eric's voices exclaimed in unison. Honey, I'll forgive you for abandoning me. For allowing me to die if you open the door. Savannah's voice shouted. Mommy, 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 I'm so hungry, mommy. Please help me. Please let me in, mommy. Alana's voice cried out as Jeanette looked helplessly at the door. Jeanette, the children are dying as we speak. Maybe there's still time to save them. Open the door. Savannah's voice taunted. Open the door. Every voice shouted in unison. Open the door. The voices grew louder. Open the door. The voices became harsher. Open the door. The voices repeated violently and thunderously, shaking the entire house. Everyone covered their ears tightly, but the many voices were too loud to ignore. Don't open the door part. 11. The bedroom. The room had fallen into darkness again as the hours passed. The entity remained cruel in its demands at the door, interchanging different voices randomly. Its words remained venomous, threatening to pick apart the strings of insecurity that plagued Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia. Daniel checked his phone again as he listened to the angry voice of Savannah curse him through the bedroom door. The phone remained unresponsive to his attempts to activate it. He threw it angrily on the bed and plopped down beside it. He positioned himself in a fetal position once more and placed his head between two pillows. His mind wandered about rapidly. He knew that the entity was saying and doing anything to get them to open the door. However, its hateful words weren't all false. He felt an immense amount of guilt over Savannah's death and over moving on. He had met Jeanette at the very hospital where Savannah spent the last few months of her life. Had he betrayed Savannah? No. He cursed the thought quickly. Jeanette was a wonderful and kind woman. She helped him and the children through a horrific time in their lives, and Savannah wanted him to find love again. She had said so herself. Daniel pressed the pillow tighter over his ear as he comforted himself mentally. Jeanette peeked out of the window curtain. The fog had thickened to the point where the sky itself was no longer visible. She couldn't even see what time of day it was as their phones didn't work. Neither did the retro digital alarm clock that sat on her nightstand. Everything had gone to black. The fog swirled around vigorously on the balcony. Jeanette closed the curtain and felt around until she found the bed. She sat at the end and stared into the darkness, listening to the door and walls vibrate from the loud and toxic rant of the entity. Its words penetrated her heart like a dagger, though logically she understood she needed to ignore it. But the truth was she did feel like she wasn't as good a mother or wife as Savannah. Savannah was renowned for her ability to balance motherhood, wifely duties, working, and illnesses. A balance Jeanette struggled with on multiple occasions. Savannah's family never let her forget it over the last 6 years. Savannah's mother took issue with Daniel moving on so quickly after her daughter's unfortunate death, and Savannah's grandparents took issue with Daniel moving on with a woman of a different ethnicity. All of these things, coupled with Jeremy's resentment over the years and Alana's premature birth and health issues, made Jeanette feel like the failure the entity said she was. Perhaps all of this was punishment for wanting something that wasn't meant to be hers. Daniel was vulnerable during his wife's sickness and after her death. Jeanette witnessed that firsthand and genuinely wanted to help him. No, I did nothing wrong. I am a good mother and a good wife. Jeanette reminded herself while swiping tears from her cheeks. Sophia sat quietly in the dark with her back against the wall. The closed bathroom door was to her left with her last best friend's corpse in it, lying alone in a tub. To her right, some feet away, were the balcony doors. She couldn't even hear the sound of her own heart beating over the gut-wrenching spiel of the entity. Being accused by the voices of those she held dearest was torture. She felt like her mind was on fire, right along with her heart. She chased ghosts for a living and had been for 4 years, however. Most leads had been hoaxes or people's unfounded fears. Nothing like this was supposed to happen. They never should have come here. It's all my fault, just like it said. I'm responsible for their deaths. Sophia cried within holding her ears. Over the last 4 years, her friends and her took turns picking the location of their next adventure and investigation. It was her turn, and she had chosen the scenic mountain town of Eastlake, home of the Culling legend. A legend that, after research, didn't tell them much, but that people apparently disappeared without a trace every 20 years or so. Residents remained hush-hush about the details, and no official reports on findings was ever located. She had insisted on going there anyways, though there was some pushback. She wanted their channel to be the first to capture some real information on it. Also, the culling had a great ring to it. It was an attention grabber, and she was mainly in charge of naming videos and keeping up with the earnings. So flippant she had been. No, no. No one knew this would happen. How could I have known this would happen? It's not my fault. It's not your fault, Sophia. Sophia screamed at herself mentally as she leaned her head back against the cold wall. The bathroom. The children sat frightened and quiet in the pitch blackness on the cold bathroom floor with their backs pressed to the tub. Before it became completely deprived of light, they all attempted to fill their pained and grumbling bellies with small cups of water while listening to the faux voices of their parents curse and blame them. Alana had long ceased crying and sat trembling lightly with her knees pulled up to her chest between Jeremy and Alexis. They all huddled close together for warmth and comfort. The entity was loud and relentless in its insults, its complaints and accusations becoming harsher and harsher by the hour. They didn't know what time of day it was as their phones remained dead. The small window gave no indication either, as the only thing visible was a thick, swirling fog that Jeremy and Alexis guessed was another trick of the entity. They didn't even know if it was still storming, as no sound could be heard except the entity's hateful dialogue. Jeremy thought about the entity's words, how it blamed him and his sister for their mother's death. She had heart issues that worsened after childbirth. He and Alexis had found this out only a few years ago when looking through old papers and coming across some of their mother's medical records. She was advised to abort both pregnancies, but decided to have him and Alexis instead. She remained on strict bed rest the last few months of both pregnancies and opted for scheduled C-sections both times. She had said on many occasions that becoming a mom was the greatest joy of her life, that being their mom was the greatest joy of her life. His thoughts wandered to the carefully placed photo of his mom holding him in her arms, looking down at him with such love in her eyes. They had an incredible bond, a wonderful closeness that he missed dearly. His mother didn't regret having him or Alexis. She loved us, and we love her. Jeremy sighed as he reached over to cuddle Alana. Alexis straightened her legs a bit on the floor. She stared into the darkness, blankly listening to multiple voices of those she loved say horrible things they would never say. She was only 6 when her mom passed away, but she still remembered her well. Her smell, her smile, her singing, and the nickname Sweet Pea she had given her. For a few years, she felt guilty liking Jeanette, so she kept her distance out of respect for her mom and to be in solidarity with Jeremy. However, Jeanette was great. She was kind and warm. She couldn't replace what was lost, but she did help fill the void. They did a lot together. Shopping, girl days, long talks. Maybe it was a betrayal to her real mom. Maybe loving someone else as a mother figure was disloyalty. Then there was Alana. Alana was born early and had underdeveloped lungs. She was mostly well now, but still suffered bad asthma attacks on occasions. Alexis loved Alana. She was adorable and cute. She enjoyed being a big sister. Alana would sometimes sneak in bed with her at night for cuddles and sleep there. She didn't mind it. It didn't bother her. She was grateful to have her as she brought so much happiness to the family, even to Jeremy, who couldn't resist her cuteness either. He too spoiled her and was protective over her. Was this also disloyalty? Alexis fiddled with these thoughts before arriving at a conclusion based on the person she remembered her mom to be, though she was young at the time of her passing. My mom was a good person. She would have liked Jeanette and loved Alana. She would be happy that Dad found happiness and that Jeremy and I are cared for. The entity increased in volume as it shook the walls and doors violently. Its demands remained the same. Open the door! Open the door! Open the door! The hours slipped, but the entity remained steadfast. Many voices screamed and yelled. Some wailed and cried as everyone in the house covered their ears, unable to sleep nor rest. Everyone's stomachs ached from hunger as their headaches returned. The entity cursed them all in deep voices that sent chills down their spines. Still, they all remained unmoved as they prayed quietly that daybreak would come soon. Don't open the door part. 12 finale. The entity continued its verbal assault, minute after minute, hour after hour. They were all hungry and sleep-deprived due to the noise. They didn't know how much time had passed, or even what day it was anymore. The temperature in the house had dropped significantly, and the electricity remained off. The house remained shrouded in darkness as the thick, gray fog thickened and swirled rampantly outside. Suddenly, the entity increased in pitch, letting out a deathly screech. The different voices began to morph into one another as they rapidly switched from one tone to the next. The sound tortured, animalistic, and horrific, a sound that instantly struck fear into the household. The bathroom. Alana sat up fearfully, feeling around the dark bathroom floor until she found Jeremy. She threw her arms around his neck as she trembled in fear. Alexis scooted over closer to Jeremy as the floor, walls, and door vibrated wildly and harder than they had ever done before. The entity continued to cry out, its words sounding jumbled and stretched. Ope, honey, doer, jelly bean, help, oh my God, what's happening now? Alexis asked, trying not to hyperventilate. I don't know, but everything is going to be okay, Jeremy replied, squeezing a frightened Alexis gently. The bedroom. Sobia door te open. The entity cried out, its words becoming more incomprehensible as it went on. The whole room seemed to shake violently, startling Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia. They all found each other in the dark room by the bed. Mutated versions of Savannah, Melissa, Jake, and Eric's voices shouted from outside the bedroom and balcony doors. The entity let out a loud and ghastly, piercing shriek that could have shattered unreinforced glass. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia covered their ears and crouched down as the house shook. Within minutes, the sound lessened and seemed to fade away slowly. Daniel looked up and realized a small amount of sunlight escaped through the window. He walked to it slowly and carefully pulled back the curtain. Jeanette, Sophia, he yelled. Jeanette and Sophia uncovered their ears and briskly joined him at the window. The gray fog was dissipating before their eyes. Within it, the snake, like tendrils, flapped and swerved violently until there was none. The sun suddenly shone through brightly, hurting their eyes. Daniel closed the curtain right as the electricity cut back on. The alarm sounded off, blasting off a loud siren that echoed through the house. Jeanette's retro, digital alarm clock suddenly blinked. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia all checked their phones simultaneously. Suddenly they were operational and had service. The time read 7 a.m. and the day Monday. Babe, it's Monday. It's Monday. Jeanette cried out, grabbing Daniel. It could be a trick. We need to wait, he said with tears welling in his eyes. You're right. You're right, Jeanette said, looking over at Sophia, who shook her head in agreement. Daniel pressed his house alarm app on his phone and deactivated it remotely. The house was suddenly silent again. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia all sat on the bed staring at the bedroom door. We should try and call the children, Jeanette said fearfully. Hello, I'm Officer Sandros. Your front door was open. We're here to help you. A man's voice sounded out, striking fear into Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia, who jumped up from the bed and faced the door. I'm here to assist you. We were sent to check on you by Mayor Paula, the voice said loudly. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia remained silent as they looked at the door in fear. Suddenly, a loud noise and popping sound caused them to scream out as the door went flying in. 3 tall policemen stood there with concerned looks on their faces. Daniel, Jeanette, and Sophia were too stunned to move or speak. Everything is okay now. It's over now. You're safe, Officer Sandros said warmly. Is this real? Sophia asked with a shaky voice. The second officer, whose name tag read Birdoff, smiled kindly. Yes, the situation is over. It's safe to come out now. Jeanette and Daniel ran past the policeman as they entered the room and headed to the hallway bathroom as Sophia broke down and recounted the events to the officers. The bathroom. It had been a few minutes since the entity had quieted and the electricity had returned. The house alarm had started and stopped as well. Jeremy, Alexis, and Alana were confused but remained quiet and still on the bathroom floor as they listened to the voices of strangers in the hallway. Kids, it's US. Oh God, are you okay? Jeanette's voice cried out from behind the bathroom door. The children stared at the door, unmoved, trembling. Everything is okay now. It's Dad. Daniel's voice cried out. Officer, please help us. Our kids are in there. They heard Daniel's voice plead. With a loud snap, the bathroom door flew open as a tall policeman kicked it in. It swung violently, hitting the counter. Daniel and Jeanette stood in the doorway, both disheveled, both with their eyes sunken in dark circles engraved on their faces, looks that matched the children. Mommy, Alana asked softly. Jeanette bent down and held her arms out. Yes, baby, it's Mommy, she said, crying. Mommy. Alana jumped up and flew into Jeanette's arms where they held each other in tears. Jeremy and Alexis stood up quivering, tears pouring from their eyes as Daniel pulled them into an embrace. They held each other tightly, crying loudly. Daniel pulled back and looked at them, noticing the dried blood stains on Alexis's shirt. Blood! Are you okay, Alexis? Daniel asked in a raspy voice. Blood! Jeanette yelled out as she moved Daniel aside to check on Alexis. I'm fine. I had a bad nosebleed, but I'm okay now. Alexis responded, crying harder. Jeanette grabbed her and hugged her tightly as Daniel lifted up Alana, stroking her hair and kissing her cheeks. Jeanette looked over at a weeping Jeremy and extended her arm out. Without hesitation, he joined the group hug. He cried like a young child on Jeanette's shoulder. They stayed that way for what felt like an eternity before releasing each other. Paramedics walked up the stairs and into the master bedroom where they carried Eric's corpse out from the bathroom. Sophia followed behind them crying and stopped when she saw the family. I told them everything, she said through sobs. Let's get the fuck out of this town, Daniel said angrily. Dad, are we leaving? Jeremy asked, swiping tears from his pale face. Yes. You hear that, Alana? We're going back home, sweetheart. Back to where there are no monsters. He replied. When? Jeanette asked, moving strands of hair out of Alexis's face. Now, he replied. Please, can I leave with you? I can't stand to be here any longer. Sophia asked, looking down at her shoes. Of course. Jeanette responded as Daniel shook his head in agreement. Alexis quickly changed her shirt as they all grabbed the bags they had brought in with them Friday. They all looked terrible and unkempt but didn't bother to shower or freshen up. They ignored their hunger pains and remained solemn as they walked past the dried, brown blood stains in the hallway and on the steps, past the leaves and tree branches that blew into the living room through the open door during the storm. They exited the house, passing the little bit of visible blood stains on the walkway that weren't washed away by the storm. They boarded the van that seemed in normal condition in silence as emergency personnel went in and out of the home. Sophia sat quietly beside a strapped-in Alana who looked traumatized and exhausted in her car seat. Jeremy and Alexis sat where they always sat and held each other's hands quietly. Jeanette sat silently in the passenger's seat, turning around to check on everyone before Daniel started the van and pulled off. They drove through the scenic town, where some of the residents were just emerging from their homes. Other than a few downed tree branches, everything looked normal. A group of children hugged each other and played happily in a yard. People chatted casually on the sidewalks. A man walked his dog, greeting a woman jogging by. Jeanette looked at the residents in confusion. Surely they had experienced the same nightmare too, right? I need to make a stop, Daniel announced, making a sharp turn. Everyone remained silent as he pulled into Edward's grocery store, where two delivery trucks were unloading. Edward stood outside, smiling brightly with a clipboard in his hand. Daniel exited the van and instructed everyone to wait inside. "Excuse me," Daniel said, walking towards Mr. Edward. "Oh, Mr. Simon." Edward's eyes widened as he looked upon Daniel's physical condition. "How much?" Daniel asked coldly. "What? How much?" "For the food box. How much do I owe you?" He repeated. "Oh, the large boxes are $50 even," he said, looking concerned. Daniel reached in his pants pocket and pulled out his wallet. He removed a $50 bill and handed it to Mr. Edward with a thank you and walked away. Mr. Edward watched him drive away in silence. They drove the hour down the mountain, passing some of the same vehicles, returning that passed by the opposite way when they came Friday. As they reached the bottom of the mountain, they all let out breaths of relief as they drove into the beauty of the horizon. So that was the end of the story. How was the story? Give me your opinion in comments, and please subscribe if you liked the story.